Hello, everyone. Welcome to School of Speech. School of Speech is presented by Speech Therapy PD, and I'm Carolyn Dolby and host. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Today's episode is called Strengths-Based Approach to Educational Inclusion. What is it and why? We have special guest Kim Murza with us today. Dr. Murza received her doctorate from the University of Central Florida, where she specialized in language and literacy, my favorite. She currently is the Associate Dean of Research and Faculty Affairs in the College of Natural and Health Sciences at the University of Northern Colorado, beautiful country. And she also previously served as a professor of speech-language pathology in the Department of Communications Sciences and Disorders. Kim has also worked privately and also in the public school system. Yes, she is really passionate about supporting all of our school-based speech pathologists. So yay, thank you for being here. I just wanted to let you know about some of her research areas. She's really into the development, delivery, and evaluation of high-quality professional learning in the schools. Additional research interests, she also includes interprofessional collaboration in the schools, coaching of extenders, community engaged learning, and the scholarship of teaching and learning. And most recently, she has been involved in the development of a program and program coordination of a program called Greenlee Treasure Chest Program. And if that's not enough, Project Life, Literacy for Immigrant Families Every Day. We are in such great hands today. But before we get started, I do want us to kind of settle in as I remind you of a few things. First of all, each episode of School of Speech, yay, is offered for 0.1 ASHA CEUs. As we were getting started, Kim and I were talking, and we want you guys to jump in because we want to know two things. Well, first of all, of course, I always want to know where y'all from, where you at. So jump in the chat, tell us where you're at. But what we want to know today is, how long have you been a speech language pathologist? How long have you been in the profession? So in the chat, where you're at and how long you've been an SLP. All right. So while you are jumping in, and Kim, you go ahead and take a look at the chat. Because I have to do our disclosures. Yeah. So just you guys talk amongst yourselves. Okay. So financial disclosures for Kim. She does receive a salary from the University of Northern Colorado. She's also receiving an honorarium for her participation in this episode from Speech Therapy PD. Non-financial, Kim is a member of CAPSID, Academic Affairs Board, as well as a member of ASHA SIG Special Interest 16. For me, I'm a salaried employee of Portland Public Schools. Yay, in Portland, Oregon. I love it. I'm also compensated for graduate courses that I teach, and I'm also compensated for hosting School of Speech, my dream job ever and forever, from Speech Therapy PD. I'm so thankful to Speech Therapy PD. Non-financial for me is I am a consultant across the district and nation, across districts across the nation, and I support program development and staff training for all things dysphagia, feeding, and swallowing. And Kim, I'm also a member of SIG's Special Interest 16 as well. I also am 13 and 14. You know what? Who cares about me? I really want to know more about Dr. Murza. Hey, Kim, thanks for coming.
Hey.
How are you?
It's great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
I love it. So I know we were talking about before, and I was like, I need maybe some review, a little resource here. I thought if we could talk about some kind of terminology, and just so we're on the same page, because semantics matters, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
the first one I was hoping that you would, and those that are listening, it's okay if I look, like I'm not a ditz, but I want to know what your meaning of inclusion is.
Great. Yes.
So
and
let's
it
start
looks
there.
like we have folks with all kinds of years of experience and coming from all over the country, which is super exciting.
Normally I look and I wasn't looking. Yeah. I'm such a ding-a-dling. Oh my gosh, look at that, everybody. Love,
yes.
love, love. We're running the gamut.
So
okay,
fun.
Katie, I'm sorry. Shout out to Katie Grosson. You're in Oregon. So am I. We should connect. Okay, back to you, Kim. Sorry. So
Awesome.
We've got everything from 2 to 40 years, you guys.
I know.
Wow.
Which is so great. And
so Esther, you're retired. Whoop, whoop. Done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. I'm jealous. But I've been an SLP for about 20 years, and I think it's helpful in this context because even our idea and understanding of what inclusion is changing, changed over the years. So for me, inclusion does not mean, a placement, though
Thank
that's
you.
kind of what we think about, are I've heard some folks talk about inclusion as, oh, we're doing inclusion, and that means our kids with disabilities are in the general education classroom. And that's focused on placement.
Mm.
Placement is important because everybody has a right to belong, right? But if we put a kid in a general education classroom without supporting them or providing the resources they need to be successful, that's not inclusion. So for me, the definition I like to use is inclusion is about really giving every student what they need when they need it to be successful. So it's really about individualizing supports for all students in a way that all students have access to the resources and supports they need to learn in the classroom. So that's kind of a newer, maybe, way of thinking about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That I want to go back, and I hope everyone hears this. I want to know more about how it's not a placement, because
Right.
for me, I will be honest, I see it, or I kind of understand it as a placement, that we're
Right.
including them into general ed. And I cannot wait to hear more about this, because
Right.
you're going to be changing our schema here. I love this.
Well,
So
and
yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, just to jump in, it can be thought of as a placement because that's a part of it.
Yeah.
If kids are separated, that's clearly not inclusion, right? Inclusion is about having children supported in the general education classroom. But what happens is if we just place students in the general education classroom and don't provide those supports, then they're not getting what they need to be successful. So that's not fully inclusion as we should be thinking about it.
No, I think, right, we're expanding the term of inclusion,
Right.
that we want all students to be educated with their peers with the least restrictions, with their typical peers with the least restrictions. But I think you're hitting it right such on the head, and what we need to hear is just putting a child, sitting them in general ed, including them in general ed, is not inclusion. That's just
Right.
having them sit in it,
Right.
right? Yeah. So like just having a student close by, right? Adjacent to is
Right.
not actually inclusion. So I love it. I love it. Well, that brings, so that's the first part I was asking about our title, but the second part I kind of want, I understand the term. I know the words strength and based and approach. All three of those words are in my vocabulary and I use them all the time. But when you put those together, what does that mean to you?
Right. Well, this is newish idea for me because at being an SLP for 20 years, I was educated under primarily the medical model of disability, right? And so a lot of us probably, I'm hoping this resonates, we were taught how to diagnose, we were
Yes.
taught how to identify disorder, and then how to remediate, how to fix that. And that is kind of used more frequently, I would say, in the medical realm, but a strengths-based approach is a different way of viewing our role and I think education and the purpose of how we support students. So it's about elevating what students can do, identifying what they can do. It's thinking about their strengths, their talents, their what gets them interested, all the things that make them uniquely who they are, and then also identifying what supports are in place in different contexts that allow them to be most successful. So, as long as IDEA is the law of the land, which, I don't see that changing very soon, we will have a role in identifying students who meet eligibility criteria. And that means we have to identify challenges that they're facing. We have to identify their disorder or, the things that they're having trouble with for us to qualify them for services. But then, and I would say even at that point where we're assessing, where we are evaluating students, we need to think about who they are and what they need in a different way. We need to focus on what is working well and then build on that. So there's a lot of tools out there, resources that I'd love to talk about, but it's really changed the way I think about my role as a speech language pathologist and how I would teach my students as they're learning how to be an SLP in the schools. It's just a completely different way of doing business. And if we want to truly include children, we have to kind of shake it up a little bit.
I love it. So when you said we need to know what the kids can do, very early on in my career, I started as a kindergarten teacher, so it was the littles. Early in my career as a speech path, I was in a high school IEP, and it was a dual student. So there was a ton of people and a ton of stuff. And the parent said this, and it changed me forever. She says, I know what my student cannot do. I need to know what he can do. And I just gave myself goose pimples. It changed me because that hit hard. Parents know that what they can't do. And so that changed me forever about always talking about what they can do. I think you're going to elevate the little bit I did to blow out, mind blowing, but you're not saying that we don't talk about deficits. We do. That's how come they are eligible for services. But once we have established the eligibility, I think you're going to lead us into what we need to do.
What we need to do.
Yeah. So how do we use this approach? Because if we're establishing eligibility, we do have to say there is deficits in speech and language, right?
Right.
But so we have to do that, but how do we incorporate strength-based in our assessment?
Right. Great question. Well, I like to think, and many of you have probably heard of dynamic assessment, that idea where you are going to kind of try things out with the student, try like a little intervention, or let's see if I give them this graphic organizer or something, or if I just give them this type of direction, or this support, if they are more successful. So the idea around a strengths-based assessment, there's a lot of aspects to this, but one of them is, can we lean first off on families to tell us, and the student themselves, to tell us who they are, what they love, what excites them, that kind of thing, what they value, what their dreams are for the good life, which is something I learned about 3 years ago. I took a course around the life course tools, which I can talk about, but it really changed how I think about person-centered planning. And people in human resources and social work and that kind of thing, they've been doing this forever, but it is a way different way of focusing on individuals and longer term goals. So what do they see for themselves? What is their good life vision? So
good life.
Yes, and so as I learned this, I was like, wow, well, what's my good vision for the good life? It's not unique to people with disabilities. Everybody wants to live a life where they have economic security, where they are surrounded by people who love them, where they can do the things they love with joy, where they can get what they need, their basic needs met. The good life is kind of universal. Yeah, we have different preferences, but people want to live a good life. And so it's really about beginning with the end in mind. What is your vision for your future? And then looking at what strengths does the person bring to the table. So the way I would go about it, and there are all sorts of strengths assessments that you can do. I've done a lot in my role, even supervising people. We've done strengths assessments. We're trying to lean into that just for us. So you want to learn about strengths. You want the student and the families to learn about their own strengths, but then also understand when they're in the classroom or when they're engaged with friends socially, what supports or resources keep them successful. And that means keeps them engaged, keeps them learning. So every teacher, every student has, things that they're good at. And can we pick out what are those things, those supports that are really facilitating continued success? And so for students to learn, they need to be engaged. So this is something I've talked about for several years around something called the social communication and engagement triad that I created with some colleagues. But it's around, if we want to keep this student engaged, what are we doing as communication partners that keeps them engaged? And what is going on in the environment? So this is really more of the social model of disability, where you're not looking internally to the student. You're not saying, what is going on within you? What is wrong with you that we need to fix? Which is kind of how I was educated, right? I'm going to identify what's wrong with you, and then I'm going to come up with a plan on how to fix you. And I think times are different. Now we recognize
times are changing.
Yeah, times are changing. Everybody is unique in their humanity, and everybody has strengths and values that we should honor. And so a different way of thinking about that is, how do I support you and who you are, and continue to support the things that are working already? So it's much more fun this way.
Absolutely. So when you started talking about, the good life, and being one of the questions is making sure that you are asking the families and the students themselves, what do you want? It made me immediately think of the triangle of evidence-based practice, because that one prong that is patient desire, patient values, and what their goals are.
Yes.
That was a aha for me. Like, are we doing that? Are we adding that as school-based clinicians into how we are providing services? Are we including that? Which now is a great segue for you to help me understand the difference between medical and social models. Because you were just, I think, when we're looking, I think this is going to dovetail it for me. But if you could kind of walk me through the difference there.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
And I love that you had that aha.
I did. I immediately, it flashed in my head, and I'm like, oh my gosh, evidence-based practice, patient and family. Yeah.
And I have to be honest with you, when I was starting off as an SLP and learning, and even when I started teaching as a professor, I really focused on that external evidence piece.
Oh,
right?
yeah, that's right. We want to show an article. We want to state, we want to, state a reference.
But, there's a lot of things that work. We have a huge body of evidence around educational strategies that support students in learning. We have a body of evidence now for our own, how do we support students in developing their communication and language and literacy and all of that. There are strategies out there. There are things we can do. We've got that. But guess what? If a family or a child is not on board, and if what we say we should do is not in line with what they want, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. And so for me, that has really shifted how I think about that triangle. But anyway, you asked about the medical versus social.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. We're going to back up. Give us some more terms, the definitions.
So, if we think about models or theoretical models of disability, that this is not specific to speech language pathology. There's in education, et cetera. There are different models for how we think about disability. And on two ends of the spectrum, I would say we have this medical model and we have this social model of disability. And, I think most people see the benefit in kind of thinking about disability with a little bit of both. But the medical model is really about identifying what is inherent to the person, like what is wrong, really, what deficits are within you, and that is creating this disability. That is directly opposed to the social model, which suggests that the individual doesn't possess this disability. It's the environmental contextual context that is causing them to experience disability. So, for example, thousands years ago, would we even say someone was dyslexic before we learned to read? No, right? So if, the demands of engaging in your environment you may have trouble meeting the demands of that environment. So, I think we can recognize that individuals have strengths, they have challenges, all of us do, but how you're supported or how you use resources that are available to you in the environment, how you use your support system can make you seem more disabled than other people, or et cetera. So it's really about, is it within the individual, or is it more the social context, the environmental context that is creating this disability? And so if you kind of are aligned more with the social model, then instead of looking within the individual, you look around and you say, what can we do to provide the supports this student needs to be successful? What can their communication partners do to support them? What can their family, what can, AI, what can any of these assistive tech tools do to support this individual?
I love this. I love the fact that you said the medical model is what's wrong with them, right? What's wrong? And we don't want to do that. Like, parents know what's wrong. We want to know what, right? How can we be affirming clinicians, sensitive and responsive clinicians, to remove those barriers,
right,
in order for them to be successful, rather than trying to fix them internally and making, just like, when I've done several episodes on neuroaffirming, right? I've had Nina Reeves on. We talked about stuttering and verbal diversity. We've talked about neurodiversity on the spectrum. And we're not here. There's a lot of like research and studies that are coming out talking about the damage that has been done when we look at the medical version of a disability, causing the person to feel wrong,
right,
and bad, and they have to fix themselves. Talk about having to start masking and not being their true authentic self. And they have to do the work for them to fit into society, versus what can we all do for everybody. Oh my God. I'm just having another, if you're just listening, I'm sorry. I just had another huge, like, eye gasp, aha, on this is exactly what you're talking about, inclusion.
Yes, exactly.
Holy guacamole, people.
Well,
geez, Kim,
you have really put it all together. You really have, by explaining
Thank
that.
God I'm smarter than I look.
No, you're
Oh my
incredible.
God. That's amazing.
But you know what? I have to be honest. When I started, and even in my PhD work, I did some work with people on the spectrum, autistic individuals, who were very interested in, and they were adults, they were interested in getting jobs and finding a partner, going on dates and that kind of thing. And some of the things I did, I would not do now because I know better. I would not teach them to mask, but I did do some of those things, and they were evidence-based at the time. And individuals I was working with, they wanted to learn how to fit in, but that's really on us as a society. And this is just one thing we can do as SLPs by embracing and helping students embrace who they are and self-advocate and understand themselves.
I can't believe you just said that. I got to stop you, Kim, because we just had a listener come in. Her name's Rebecca. I'm sorry, Miss Shauna, Rebecca. She was like, just said advocacy. And that's the next piece. Because as Rebecca was saying, what she said is, since we only temporarily have the ability to affect the student's environment for a short period of time. Right. She assumes the key component to this is teaching advocacy to our students and 100%. Our families. Amen.
Amen, sister. And Listen,
Love
I
it.
think something I have said in some of my webinars and things is we have to elevate, especially as children get older, because sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
difficult to, when you're working with middle or high schoolers, you're like, okay, and maybe they are struggling in school. And so there's a lot of things maybe that you're like, well, should I work on this? They're so behind from their peers. Focusing on self-determination and self-advocacy is always the right choice over a discrete skill focus. So at some point, and I would say earlier than this, students have to understand who they are and their
Yeah.
unique values, talents, strengths, and also some of their challenges so that they can learn how to help themselves, what things they need to get the most out of their own life, their experience. And then if we teach students how to self-advocate, then we're setting themselves up for a better future. And let me tell you, working in higher ed, I'm
Mm-hmm.
even seeing this here in college. This is really changing the way we support students, and our younger students, they know who they are
Mm-hmm.
what they need, and they're going to advocate. And I love that so much. So we can be a part of that by supporting them with this.
Yeah. Jessica jumped in and and when I mentioned the thing about masking, because we have to fit
Yes,
in, that's why girls are so underdiagnosed. Interesting concept. Yeah.
it
We're
is.
yeah.
And I've learned a lot from some of our SLP colleagues who are neurodiverse and have
Mm-hmm.
been sharing things, sharing their experiences and what has really helped them and what has been, like you said, really almost traumatizing for them.
Yeah.
And so, just as families, when they come to the IEP meeting every year, it's like we're re-traumatizing them and their
Right.
student by saying, look, you still can't do all of this stuff. That stinks to hear. No one wants to hear that over and over every year. And
Yeah.
and families know, and students themselves hopefully know, I have value. I'm a unique human and I bring inherent value to this world no matter what I can or cannot do. And so it's
Yes.
just a different way of thinking about our role. And we still have so much to offer, even if we're not focused all the time on diagnosing and fixing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I like when we do have to diagnose. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we're not saying no. We're saying yes, we're diagnosing because we have to establish eligibility under those 13 eligibility criteria under IDEA. We got you guys. Yes,
Yes.
we are doing that. But now we're charged with, okay, they are eligible. And so where do we go from here
Right.
is how we determine how we're going to provide our services.
Right.
Are we going to try to fix them because they're wrong? Or are we going to try to, Kim, what are we doing?
Support what's already working and build on that. And so, can we do more of the things that are already working? Can we provide those supports in different environments, in different contexts, with different people? We know it works here. Let's expand it. Let's extend it. So, I think it's just a different way of thinking about intervention and service delivery as well. So,
Okay, all right. So, okay, we've been talking a little bit about shifting our minds to about what their strengths are, but now you've just introduced service delivery. What do you
yes.
mean by that? I mean, I do know what service delivery is. Come on, people. But I mean, let's talk about that. How does
Yeah.
that
And
change?
I mean, if we buy into this idea and if we buy in to the ultimate goal of inclusive education for all students, where
Mm-hmm.
students get what they need to learn in the way that works best for them and show what they know and who they are using resources that we provide in the general education classroom with their peers, then pulling them out is probably not super in line with that. And so
Okay.
what's challenging, and I have worked in the schools, you can't just be like, okay, I'm changing tomorrow, right? You
Yeah,
have,
no.
the IEP is written a certain way. We've got to really think strategically about this. But there are some things you can do. And actually, what I suggest to SLPs in the schools is to start slowly to try to consider yourself what you could offer through what we call, or what others have called, the collaborative consultative model.
Ooh, look
So
at you
if
learning new word. I'm learning a lot today, people.
awesome,
Collaborative, consultative model. Okay.
yes,
Collaborative,
yeah,
consultative.
thank you. Collaborative consultative modle. And so the idea behind this is, and if you look at a typical school day, right? And if we were able to pull a child out twice a week for 30 minutes, that is actually, I had it down here somewhere. I use it in my slides. Okay, so think about twice a week for 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage of the school week is that they're with you learning these skills or whatever? It is only about 3% of the time. So if we are focused only on what we do directly with that child in 3% of the time that they're in school, the chance for them to transfer and generalize what they're learning with us into a different environment with different people, it's just a huge leap to think of it that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
instead, who's with our students most often? It's their peers and it's their teacher.
Teachers.
It's their teacher. And so this is hard. This was hard for me to kind of wrap my head around, because I came into this profession because I love children. I like working with them. I like helping them. We're all going into this because we are helpers at our core. We want to make a difference, right? And so the idea of, oh my gosh, now what if I don't get to work directly with students? That's scary. And it's kind of like, that's the most fun of my job, right? But guess what? If we develop relationships with teachers and think about how we provide services differently, think about how we can change the IEP so that we can move towards more of a collaborative consultative model, which means we work with teachers and they provide the direct support for students.
Okay. I love this. Okay. Two things.
Okay.
One, last week's episode was on middle school with Holly Klein, and you guys, if you didn't listen last week, shame on you. Go back and take a listen, because this is so crazy aligned. It's awesome.
Oh, good.
Yeah, this is amazing. I love this. Second is Lisa, I've got it in the chat. What she's saying, listen to this, people, because I'm going to read this for those that are just listening.
Yeah.
Lisa does agree with this 1,000%. Yes, thank you, Lisa. But I find there to be a bit of a disconnect between this way of thinking, and how the rest of the school environment operates. You're not wrong.
No.
And it is slow. It is a difficult shift. So, and Lisa, you're right on. She says educating staff is a necessary part of success.
Yes,
right. I mean,
is.
it's, we have to think of it as training the trainers.
Oh, yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And yes, and Lisa, you're so right. I mean, everything in education, higher ed, K-12, everything is slow, right?
Yeah.
But I think, think about this time that we're in, this neurodiversity affirming time we're in, this equity and inclusion. I mean, despite what's happening, I think people generally understand that kids have the right to be with their peers, and their peers have the right to experience interacting with people who are different. And it's we know, we have research that supports that inclusion in terms of place-based inclusion has great benefits. But how do you make this shift? It is going to take us having to put our advocacy hat on, our advocate hat on, but we can't just go in and blow it up. That's never going to work. So I think some things we might want to consider is partnering with people who you already have a relationship with, who are already doing some wonderful things, and start small, right? And then gradually, some things you can gradually update IEPs in the way you talk about service delivery. So instead of putting how many times per week and the minutes, do it monthly, do it, over longer. So you have way more flexibility in how you support students. Eventually, you're going to have to also get families on board, because it's scary. I can only imagine as a parent, if somebody comes in and is like, look, you're not going to get these services like you've had before. So you have to sell this a little bit. You have to say, here are the benefits, and you have to show them what this could look like. And really, it's about providing those supports in the classroom and then supporting our educator colleagues. And there are some really cool things, like, as I was talking to you before, universal design for learning.
Oh, good. I'm so,
AI.
look at us getting back to what we wanted. Yeah, we were talking about this before, and I said, I want you to define that to, I know this is like a whole podcast on definitions. So before you define universal design for learning.
Right. So this is, I mean, you may have heard about this, UDL. It's the big buzzword around even college campuses now, which is just amazing how quickly this has come into, this realm. But the idea is, and this is from cast.org. So
Could you spell that?
Yes, CAST.org.
Cast.org. Okay, I'm going to pop that in the chat for those that are
awesome. And they have all these free resources actually printed out. You're not going to be able to see this, but it's like this whole rubric. And what is so beautiful about this is that the whole goal of UDL is to help learners develop agency, help them understand how they learn and how to advocate for what they need. And then what UDL does, it's kind of like a tool to provide educators mainly with a way to think about how they're teaching students, so that it gives opportunities for students who learn very differently to access the content in a variety of ways and engage with the content in a variety of ways. You can think about like, oh, are you a visual learner or whatever? I mean, that's kind of the old way of thinking about it.
Right. But, are you kinesthetic? Are you audio?
Yeah.
Are you,
okay.
Auditory or this was what I was being a teacher from way back when. That's how we were taught. So teach me better.
Right. So it helps educators and SLPs design content and design assessments that provide multiple ways for students to engage in the learning process, and then to access material in a variety of different ways, and then show you what they've learned in different ways. Oh, so guess what? This is like, and when you look at this rubric, oh my gosh, everything underpinning this is language literacy. It's those foundations, right? So it is very exciting to me. And educators are learning about this. Educators are learning about this. They're starting to use it. So they're creating assignments. They're creating content that gives learners options. It's about giving options. And so guess what? If we do this for everybody, students, then all students benefit. What's cool is the things that work for kids with disabilities are just good practices.
Amen. Oh my gosh. Talk about, okay, again, we're coming back to Carolyn just being awed and wowed. So inclusion would be including everybody. Everybody benefits. Right? And as the old saying is, everyone would benefit from speech therapy, but not everybody requires it. But if you change your mindset and service delivery, and that everyone would benefit.
Right. And you know what we bring to the table? Guess what? We are really
all the things.
I mean, all the things. But also we are so good at scaffolding.
Yes, we are
good at working with a student and saying, oh, this is the wrong level, thinking of Vygotsky, zone of proximal development, all that stuff. So we are really good at helping students get to the right degree of, challenge, providing those little supports. We have menus of supports, right? We have all these tools in our toolboxes that we can use. And guess what? Those tools can benefit all kids. And you know what? A lot of our educator colleagues know about some of those tools too. So why don't we just provide them as
For
an option for
everyone.
everyone. Wouldn't it be cool if every student, I mean, this is a dream of mine, every
Mhm.
student had an IEP, every
Yes.
student had their own learning plan, every student had their own communication plan. That's
Happening. I love
I
this.
know. So
I
we're gonna have to
know.
blow up special
That would
ed,
be
but no,
full inclusion. Like
that's
no one would
it.
feel out, no one would feel different, no one
I
would
know.
be ostracized for anything. Not that I'm saying that people are.
Right.
So
But
maybe the first step would be us as SLPs taking a check ourselves on what are our strengths.
yes, thank you for that segue. That's
Yes.
beautiful. Right. And you know what? This was so eye-opening to me because I was mentioning we all did the Clifton Strengths Assessments, which is like, you can buy it and whatever. There's a lot of research that supports its use, and I found it very helpful. But as as an SLP, I've been an SLP for a long time. I was so good at finding the strengths in kids and pointing out how great they are and what they're really good at. We're all very good at that. Guess what? I am not as good at figuring that out for myself, you know, because I mean, imposter syndrome, all that stuff,
Oh, for sure.
right?
Yeah.
But in this new role, so I'm an administrator now, and I'm looking around, and, my dean is a mathematician.
Oh,
The other
no.
associate dean is a biologist. They're
Good Lord.
very different thinkers. And
Yes.
when I came in here, I was like, oh my gosh, I hope one day I can be like them. And it's taken me quite a bit of time and work to say, wait, no, I can be a leader. I can be the best version of myself. And guess what? That is still great leadership. I still have value. So I have to like walk the talk for myself. And we all do. So
I have to say, I always remind people I'm a wordsmith. I understand language for the most part. I stumble over my words and I own up to all
Me
my
too.
silliness. But, I love that let's take an inventory of our strengths.
Yes, for real.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot to offer. And what's really cool is when you start doing this kind of work with the people you work with. Guess what? Then you start valuing and like understanding them as people in a different way. And this is really cool too. So there's a whole bunch of research out there that says, what the best predictor of student success is not socioeconomic status or their test scores or this kind of stuff. In a school, it is collective teacher efficacy. Guess
Okay,
what
say that louder for the ones in the back.
collective teacher efficacy. And we could say collective educator efficacy. And all this is the belief in each other that collectively we can make a positive impact on students. And that is mind blowing because it's not any kind of data or whatever, it's our belief in each other. So if we start learning about what we bring to the table and we start valuing the strengths in each other, guess what? That's going to build our collective efficacy. We're going to start to believe, hey, you know what? As a team, I'm not good at everything, but when I work with you, we bring all of this to the table and we can help these students. And that is the best predictor of, and it's Hattie's research. If anyone's interested, send me an email. There's so much on there.
Say the name again.
Hattie, Hattie.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the biggest meta-analyses ever done in education. It's collective teacher efficacy that makes the biggest difference, which just blows up a lot of what I thought about, what I needed to do to be an effective SLP, to be an educator. Now we have to work together in a positive way and value each other. So
yes. And I think going back to that, to kind of selling it to the IEP and to not only the staff, but to the parents is that just because we were doing 2 times 30 doesn't mean we should, right? Just because we had a goal for eye contact, doesn't mean we should. When
Right.
we know better, we do better. And
Yes.
when we are showing that when what we can, yeah, if we're pulling them out for 3% of their day or their week, because we're doing it by
Right.
week, right? 3%.
Yes.
What is the real impact? Whereas if we are truly changing their environment by, yes, bringing it into their classroom,
Mhm.
that, oh my gosh, it's sort of like you give a man a fish and you teach, I'm,
Right. No, you're right. That I know what
yeah,
you mean. I don't know
yeah,
what it is.
I don't either, but
Anyway, what is interesting, so here's an interesting little side note. So as I was working with colleagues on the social communication and engagement triad, which is all about looking at what's working in the environment and doing more of those supports, right? We worked with paraeducators. And
uh-huh.
I don't know about you, but when I was in the schools, our paraeducators were often the ones that were part of the community. They were in the school for a long time. They knew these kids. Some of them had been with these kids for years. They really understood the children they were working with. And in this district we were working at, the special education teachers, they had a problem with turnover, right?
Yep.
So, I mean,
Yeah,
because
we
this
all
is
do.
hard. This
Yeah,
is
it is.
hard. But a lot of times those paraeducators were there and they stayed there. And guess what? We worked with them because they were working directly with a lot of the students. And we helped them see that instead of being the helper, we
Mhm.
had them try to own this idea of being the independence facilitator and focusing on engagement as the goal
Okay, I'm
instead
sorry.
of task completion.
I
So,
have to slow you down.
okay. Yes.
I'm trying to write this down because I need to hear this. You, instead of having them be
The helper,
not
the
being the
helper,
helper, they are being the,
independence facilitator,
I love this.
right? It's just a different way of thinking of your role because these people who are paraeducators, and my mom was a paraeducator for many years, and she has that heart where she wants to help the students. She wants to see them successful. But when you just want to help, you can often predict what they need. You can, and
Yeah.
so then you can do some things for them. And so, and then also they were facing a lot of pressure, like, okay, we got to finish this. We got to get this done. And so you just they were focused on task completion
Right.
rather than focusing on extending engagement or keeping the engagement going. So when our students are engaged, they learn. And so if we elevate engagement as the goal rather than completing this whatever task you have to do, then that interaction is what it's all about. And then and also thinking of yourself as an independence facilitator, you provide just the right amount of support and then you hand it over, So it made such a difference and it really empowered them. And what we also did, we videoed them with their students. And
Oh,
guess
boy.
what we did? We showed the video with the other paras, and they were like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this. But once they got over that, we asked their peers to point out the things that they did really well. We focused on strengths with them too.
I love
And
this.
then guess what happened? They were like, oh my gosh, yes, I did that. I am good at this. They owned it. They wanted to do more of those things. So this whole focus on strengths is great for students, but it's good for all of us. It's changed. Honestly, this sounds cheesy, but it's changed my life, y'all.
No,
It has.
I am on board 100% because when you say if they instead of being a helper, because a lot of
Right.
times when you help, you're actually
Right.
doing it.
Right.
Let's not lie. They're
Right.
doing it, right?
Yeah.
Because their task completion, let me help you get that. I'm going to describe that real fast because we're going to get that
Because
and
of
get
all
that
the
out of the way.
pressures. Yes.
Versus you are facilitating their independence.
I know.
Zoinks. Yes, please.
Right.
Right?
And you're
So
keeping the engagement going. Those are the two goals. That's it.
keep getting them as independent as possible while staying engaged.
Yep. I mean,
Okay.
think
I know it
about
sounds like so easy. I know it's not. It is
it's
hard
not
as
easy.
heck. I
It
know
is.
that's why this job is not for the weak, you know?
It is not, but it really helped. And I see
Mm.
Emily say that the pairs are so important, and they are. And
Yeah.
I mean, talk about a wonderful partner to have. It is working with those paras who are in the trenches, as they say, and
Yep.
they're day in, day out. They spend so much time with those children,
Mm-hmm.
those students. And so that is a really great way to extend your reach, extend your impact. So that's what I mean by collaborative consultative model. It's coaching people, it's teaming with them, it's collaborating with them. It's also being humble enough to learn from them because
Mm-hmm.
they're the
Yeah.
content area experts, not us, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a partnership, and when that really happens, it's a beautiful thing. And collaboration is hard, and it doesn't always work well, but when it does, it makes you believe in it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, I've got, okay, collaborative consultative model.
Mhm.
Okay, people, let's all get on board on that. I love when you're talking I love little terms. I really
Oh,
do
good.
like when you name things and it just really means something. Independence facilitator.
Yeah.
That's your job, right? Your job is to build their independence and also engagement. That was the two things for success you said. And I love the fact that you said the best predictor of success was collective educator efficacy.
Yeah.
If we are all working together and we're
We're all able to make a difference.
all able to make a difference.
And we all
Absolutely.
believe that in each other. I mean,
Mhm.
it's this belief. I'm going to throw one more fun term out,
Okay, yay.
and it's
Wordsmithing.
positive niche construction.
I said it. I'm sorry. I was so rude. I was talking over
Oh,
you.
no,
Say it
excuse me.
again. Say it again.
Positive niche construction. I
Tell
know
me more. Tell me
it
more.
sounds so fancy, but it's really about this inclusive service delivery. It's about reshaping these learning environments. So
Okay.
it's again, it goes back to universal design for learning and your menu of resources and things. It's just giving all students the access to the things that will help them learn and be
Okay.
successful. So, I think the ultimate goal is for us to help our students own that and understand for themselves what they need to be successful. Understand, okay, I know that this environmental support helps me do this. This tool I can use and it helps me do this, and then eventually advocate for that. But this is a different way of thinking about assessment too. So when you go in to look at even eligibility assessment, we also want to look at what is working in the environment. And the environment includes the physical environment, but also the people in it, the context, right?
Yes.
So those supporters, what is this person doing that keeps this child successful? So that's another fun thing to just throw out there every now and then. Positive niche construction. So it's what is needed in the environment to keep this student successful, and how can we
Okay.
do more of it?
And how can we do that? How can we create a positive niche? How can we construct a
Yes.
positive niche
Yeah.
environment?
Yeah, sure.
Niche
You're right.
that would be unique to them. That's their, right? Is that what you're
Yeah,
thinking?
so it's like, okay, so if we think of the neurodiversity, idea, what everybody's brains are different, everybody's what they need to learn and show people who they are and what they love,
Mhm.
that's different. So can we provide those tools for everyone so that no matter which way you use, so like fundamentally an AAC device, if I
Mhm.
need to tell you who I am and I want to
Mhm.
share what I know, you have to have access to that all the time, right?
Sure.
So that's
Yeah.
a very basic kind of way. So how are we going to create an environment that supports those resources being used and available when they're needed? And so that takes a lot of work. It's,
Yes.
and I mean, it's hard as an educator to always, make sure that their communication system is available, et cetera. That is even hard. So, but how do we think differently about that? This is what everybody needs to be successful. We need to make sure that these things that keep these children successful are available, and eventually they know that what they need, and they can advocate for that, for themselves later on.
Absolutely. I mean, just on that, I know we're getting towards the end, but when you said, their AAC, how the difference is, you could be doing some really great stuff on their AAC in your room 2 times 30. But if you were actually doing that in the classroom, modeling it for the teacher, they don't know. And if you're modeling it, boom, you're teaching them, right?
And, I actually, many years ago, when I was at the University of Central Florida, I worked on a research study around partner communication for AAC. And I've stolen that idea. So basically, we know that if you teach the communication partner how to facilitate use of AAC and model that with the child, that is critical for their success. So, but we all do things as communication partners. Even me, you nodding right now.
Yeah.
While I'm talking, that is helping me, right?
Oh,
it is for sure. But, like those little things. So communication partners in different environments do things that allow students to be more successful, to engage, to communicate themselves, take another turn. So it's very basic kind of things, but what does this student really respond to? So you got to,
Again, I am loving this, because when we're talking about engagement, and I know I would want to engage more if I feel like I'm doing something right. Or somebody's enjoying what I'm doing or saying, if you're thinking I'm funny, I might be funnier. If you think, if I feel like I'm on the right track, and, you're going to want to keep adding. So engagement is, okay, here we go. I'm bringing it together here. In order to keep them engaged, you are using what their strengths are, so that the way that you are presenting the material is how they best. Do I have it?
Yes. And their strengths, also the strengths of the classroom, of the teacher, of the environment, like all those resources. So it's hard because you can't look at things in isolation, right? You have to say the whole picture. In this interaction, what was working well, and what were the things we can identify that we should do more of, that we should take to the lunchroom, that we should, what's going on at home? How does mom, when mom does this with the student, they're very engaged, but we can't, so you have to really take a close look at what is working in all areas. So,
right. And that also means the people, like, why is the student doing really well in this environment with this teacher? How can we then get whatever is working here into the other environment?
Yeah. So we still have to be expert assessors and evaluators. We have to, be kind of like detectives. Is what I tell my
100% we are. We are. Yeah.
Yeah. And we already are, but you're kind of trying to figure out what pieces of this puzzle, of this interaction, are really making the difference. And that's hard to do, but it's exciting because there's a lot of stuff out there that can help you with this too. So,
well, I am not going to let you go. I mean, that's not a threat, not a stalker. Okay. But I know we're getting towards the end, but there's some things that I was really trying to scribble down, but I know that others are going to want to know some of these resources that you were talking about. And one of them was, I just got Triad, and I didn't get the full thing. Could you type that into the chat for me?
Actually, yes.
I was going to say it and I'll tag, but I said, no,
and this is something that me and my colleagues created.
Oh, okay. Is that okay to share, or is it something that we can look up? Oh, okay.
And I'm going to share my email.
Yes, please.
Hold on, I'm having trouble typing and talking. So this is what we created, and we've written some articles and stuff about it. It's not the end all be all. It's just one tool. There's a lot of tools.
Hey. Hey, hey,
Yeah.
hey. No.
But I love sharing resources. It is a strength of mine,
Mm-hmm.
is gathering resources and getting them out there. So if you email me, I would be so happy to share some of these tools. There's websites, there's all kinds of free tools out there. Here's lifecoursetools, I think, .com. And if that doesn't work, just Google it. They have the most amazing tools out there to help you help your students and their families think about their vision for the good life and begin
I
with
love
vision.
that. Yeah, the
I
good
know.
life. If you were gonna come away with anything, the good life.
Right.
That's what we're
Let's
here for.
all
The good life.
let's all just visualize our good life and work towards it and do more of the things we love and focus on the things we're good at. Do a
Yeah.
little bit more of that.
I love this. Kim, I absolutely have loved this so much.
You're so kind.
Oh,
Thank
you
you.
have been so generous, not only with your time, but just with your knowledge. I have just pages of just things that you have said that I'm going to have to now digest a little bit and just kind of go through, because you have just really, this has been so positive. I feel so good.
Oh, I love
I just
that.
feel so
My
good.
work
Oh
here
my
is
God,
done.
the good life. I'm not blowing smoke up anybody's skirt on anything. This has just been fantastic.
You're very
I
kind.
just
Thank you.
think that really just changing the way we think of things into the strength-based approach, first with ourselves,
Yes.
so we
First with
fully
ourselves.
understand it. How do we understand to teach something if we don't know how to do? You have to know how to do before you can teach it. So do strength-based with ourselves. Then that's what we're going to be bringing back into our therapy, which then would just automatically make us want to change maybe some of that service delivery. And when I want to leave us on the thought of this whole thing is inclusion.
Yes.
And
it is.
inclusion is, Kim,
It
come on.
is. Actually, I wrote something down and now I don't have it. But let me just wing it.
Yeah,
It is
wing it.
really recognizing that the humanity in every child and that the fact that everyone deserves to belong and
Yes.
feel like they can be successful and show the best of who they are in
Yep.
school and beyond.
Yep. Inclusion is not a placement, meaning you're not just sitting next to a typical peer. Inclusion means fully belonging because they are engaged, because they are getting support by an independent facilitator that is finding their strengths and what motivates them to keep them engaged. It's not the task completion, it's the engagement of the materials.
Woo! Thank you.
I don't know
Mic drop.
I don't know what's come over me today. I love it. Well, as
Awesome.
we start to sign off, I just have to remind, first of all, thank you. You're coming back because you're amazing. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you in the mid drink. There's so much more I want to talk about. So I'm hoping you want to come back because we want you to come back.
Anytime.
And just those that are here, thank you so much that came. We had a great group. I want to thank everyone for joining tonight. And I hope to see everyone on our next episode of School of Speech. Thanks, guys. Bye, guys. Bye, Kim. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.